And joining us now is a former General Secretary of the NPP. He's led NPP into an election. He knows exactly how it is to win and lose. But before this election, way before this election, he saw what Andy Apiakobi is seeing now and decided to join another force or movement into this election. He's one of the leading members, in fact, and a senior advisor to Alan Kojo Chamanting, the leader of the movement for change, talking about none other than Nana Ohene Ntow. Nana, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Alfred.
It's been a while.
Yeah, sure, I've been busy.
You've been busy.
Doing diagnosis.
Doing what? Doing what?
I see. But welcome back anyway.
Thank you.
It didn't go as you expected.
No, it didn't.
But many were hoping you even cross 1%, but it didn't happen.
But you see, the most important thing that Alan and all of us stood for was change. I mean, change can be measured. We wanted a certain type of change, some quantum of change. But by the end of the election, the status quo was not maintained. So, I mean, at least in some sense, there is change.
Right.
It was not as dramatic, as transformational as the movement for change in Alan Chamating and some of us would have wanted to see. But it was very clear that if Ghanaians had voted to maintain the status quo of MPP, that would have been major disaster.
Major disaster?
Major disaster.
Oh.
And some of us had said that, and I did give specific factors when I spoke to one of your sister stations. I said, if in the face of the level of corruption that we are seeing, real or apparent, if in the face of this level of arrogance of power, if in the face of the level of mismanagement and economic hardships, if in the face of the Galamsey menace and the destruction of our resources, natural resources, and so many other factors, NPP could win an election, then Ghana was finished. And that indeed, these people in NPP will never respect Ghanaians again. And I did send a clear message to the people of Ghana that I think I have a clear sense of what the recent history of our politics and our governance is. I have some experience, and I want to advise. And I'm very personally happy, even though my candidate, preferred candidate, Alan Chamating, did not make such an impact. That fundamental principle of a change and the fact that this government needed to be told, this party, MPP, needed to be told that you cannot continue to take people for granted and still get them endorsing you. I think that I'm very, very happy about the outcome of this election. Of course, GM, the President-elect, His Excellency President John Mahama, people don't know this. He has been a very personal friend, not in MPP, not in PNDC, way before PNDC politics. In the 80s, when he came to do his internship from the School of Communication Studies, before I went there, he came to the TV newsroom. And I worked very closely with him, helping him through newsroom practice and so on. That is where we became friends. At the time,
GBC.
In GBC. At the time, he was working with Plan International. And when he decided to enter politics, towards the end of the 80s into 1991, I was the person he approached to take over his job at Plan International. He, in fact, did introduce me to the director of the program. I went and had a chat with them. But I decided that I wanted to stay in media. So I told John, I said, well, I still enjoy TV. I want to continue. So since then, if I meet His Excellency John Mahama now, there's a code name that we use for each other in the newsroom. That's what he used to call me.
Which is what?
I won't tell you. You've got to get into the newsroom.
Yeah.
You know, so, but getting back into our own politics and governance, as Martin was saying, clearly, what we have got is the lesser of two evils. And it is very sad, though, but we are stuck with it. But the other thing that I really want to note with respect to Alan's entry and the turnout is that even though Ghanaians will complain about certain things, when you ask them to change it, they will find other reasons why they want to hold on to what they themselves are complaining about.
Okay.
And it's quite a complicated phenomenon in our society, in our politics. You know, a majority of the people, look, if you talk to 10 people in the streets during the campaign, at least 5, 6 people will tell you, oh, Alan is the best person for the job, but he's not going to win. And I said, but how do you reconcile the two? So it will mean that a certain culture of the duopoly is so deeply entrenched. A certain sense of multi-party democracy, multi-party, and the word is party, is entrenched to the extent that even the big institution that manages our elections processes, the Electoral Commission, was basically practically refusing to recognize in real sense any independent. I mean, we basically had to fight Electoral Commission to recognize that there are independents. They would have recognized you on paper.
Right.
But when it got to relating, it was a different matter. So there was this entrenchment of party.
Right.
And there was the difficulty of people moving from that position of entrenchment. So really, a lot of those dynamics I saw coming into play. But at the end of the day, as I said, there is some change. As far as I'm concerned, it's quite cosmetic.
Right.
This change is not really dramatic. But for now, I think most Ghanaians will say this should definitely be better than what the NPP had been serving Ghana for almost 8 years.
So this greed and selfishness, you saw it in the MPP?
It went to an extreme. It's never been seen in our recent history, in our recent politics before. I don't want to talk about the personal aspects of it, but everybody gets a sense of it. I mean, when Martin has referred to some of it, when party leaders will tell you that the MPP has 1 million ways of winning election. I mean, it means that it doesn't even matter what they did or what they did not do. Yeah. They just have a way of winning elections, and that's it. Whether you like it or not, we're going to win. And when you do things like that, you think people are not listening. You think people are not thinking and watching. It was such an insult. So I was very happy that in MPP's own stronghold, a lot of people were just quiet.
Ashanti region.
They were just waiting. And the results showed that, well, you can insult us for 4 years. On one day, we'll tell you that we are the ones who decide. And the president initially will say things like, I cannot hand over to someone I had beaten in a previous contest, which covered both Alan Chamating and President John Mahama. Because internally, in the party's primaries, let's say that over the period, President Akufo-Addo had beaten Alan Chamating, so he had beaten him in contest. And then also, in a general election, President Akufo-Addo had beaten John Mahama. So it was clear that between John Mahama and Alan Chamating, Akufo-Addo was not ready to hand over to any of them. So who was he ready to hand over to? Of course, it was Bawumia. And then people had to criticize him and bash him and attack him to the extent that now he had to come back and say, oh, okay, whoever wins, grudgingly, I will hand over. And now he was telling others, telling John Mahama that John Mahama should accept the outcome of the election. And I was like, I don't think this president really understands the position of a president. If we made you a president, it doesn't, no, you see, President Akufo-Addo was behaving as if he went to war and conquered Ghana. It wasn't as if he had won an election, you know. And some of those things, I think it got to Ghanaians. And Ghanaians began to tell themselves, let's wait. Let's keep it cool. Let's bide our time. And on election day, we will speak very loudly and very clearly to this party and to this president who clearly doesn't respect us. I think it is one of the biggest reasons why we see this kind of outcome. Because, I mean, it almost sounds unnatural for MPP to have lost. Because MPP is not a small party. The incumbent party. Losing such level of votes. You know, these are things that...
Number of seats over 1.5 million.
The evidence for me is not difficult to find. The very attitude of the leadership of that party. And mind you, even their own internal democratic principles had been totally violated.
the
internal principles of
MPP?
MPP. I mean, if you are going to go for an internal primary to select members of parliament, to select presidential candidates, and the signal goes out from the presidency especially that these are people I cannot work with, don't retain them in parliament. Whoever is seen openly supporting particular candidates, Alan Chamateng and the rest of them, you get penalized. I mean, I don't want to go back into all of those things. Those who deny it is up to them. But the evidence is there for so many other people who are even outside of the MPP to see. Now, when you do that, you actually weaken your own party structures and strength. So it is no wonder that eventually, when the elections are held within the community, within the constituency, the people will speak and tell you, the people you have foisted on us are not the choice that we make. So we will decide otherwise. Some of these things, I think, have really contributed, especially to the MPP's loss of so many seats. That one, the local dynamics
All
will
politics
tell you
is
that.
local indeed.
Yes, yes.
Well,